fellow First Nations. Welcome to the traditional territory of Fort William First Nation. My name is Catherine Banning, a band member with Fort William First Nation, and we just wanted to take a couple of moments of silence to honor the First Nation veterans on this Remembrance Day. The community of Fort William First Nation had a number of soldiers during all of the wars, and we honor them on this day and respect and honor all of the First Nation veterans from the Robinson Superior Treaty and the First Nations across Canada. Please take one moment of silence with us to honor those First Nation veterans, and then the Webaquay Supply Road Project team will present right after. Thank you. Miigwech.
Great. Thank you for that, Kathy. Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody to another live streaming event for the Webequate Supply Road Project. My name is Marian McMahon.
I'm Don Parkinson.
And we are the engagement team for the Webequate Supply Road Project. Now, in light of COVID-19 pandemic, we have been doing these live streaming sessions in lieu of doing community visits. Because we cannot go visit Indigenous communities, we are doing these live streaming events on the Webequate Supply Road Project. So we've been doing this for a series of weeks now, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon, focusing on different topics and components of the terms of reference for the environmental assessment. So today we are going to do a little run through of the terms of reference and give you some key highlights there. We do want you to engage with us. Send us your comments and questions via text at 807-630-1864 or by email at kathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. That is cathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. So the contact information will be above here on the screen throughout the session, so please do engage with us. Also, you can drop in your questions and comments on Facebook and YouTube, however you are viewing this session today. So to start things off, we'll just have Don here to start us off with our terms of reference presentation.
Okay, to give everyone a bit of a background, this is not an environmental assessment for the proposed Ring of Fire mining developments, nor is it an environmental assessment for the road connecting to the provincial road network. This is a supply road connecting Webequay First Nation to the Ring of Fire. The purpose of the supply road is to allow Webequay First Nation to benefit from opportunities associated with the planning, development, and operation of any mines that might be developed in the area, as well as mineral exploration activities. So in terms of the project setting, the regional project setting, we're in northwestern Ontario. About Webequay First Nation is about 600 kilometers northeast, mainly north of Thunder Bay. Locally, it's surrounded by a number of other First Nations, including Nibenamik and Neskantaga as well. So first, I want to talk about Webequay's approach to engagement. It's a unique approach, and I think it's important that everyone learn and understand their three-tier approach. Webequay's three-tier approach it consists of 3 tiers that are very closely connected with one another. The first tier, the innermost tier, is the core tier, which essentially represents the settlement area, and it consists of the community and their overall well-being, be it physical health, mental health, social health, education, employment opportunities, and income. And then the next tier is what's known as the relational tier. The relational tier is about preserving the culture of the community. So that could be the language. It could also be increasing understanding of the culture by others, traditional cultural activities, and of course, one of the key components of that is ancestral knowledge inheritance, passing down the knowledge from the elders to the next generation. It's a very important part of the relational tier. And then finally, the foundational tier, which basically relates to how Webaquay itself deals with the outside world, whether it's through treaties and partnerships, or just generally about the fair sharing of benefits from the land with government and industry. So Marian's going to take you now through the environmental assessment process.
Great, thank you, Don. So the Webequay Supply Road is going to be undertaking a coordinated Webequay federal provincial environmental assessment process and following all three of those processes. So on this slide here, you will see the yellow stars of where we are at right now with the project. So first off, with Webequay's process, again, we're following the three-tier model, which Don talked about earlier. Webequay has prepared the terms of reference and has engaged with its membership on it, as well as the tailored impact statement guidelines, which is part of the federal process. As part of the federal EA, Webequay submitted a detailed project description, which was submitted to the Impact Assessment Agency of Canada. And from there, the agency reviewed it and then issued tailored impact statement guidelines outlining what the proponent has to do to study the environmental assessments and impacts. For the provincial EA, Webequay prepared the terms of reference, which was then submitted to Ministry of Environment for a decision. So after all those steps, now currently the Webequay project team is now conducting the studies, consulting with Indigenous communities and stakeholders, and starting to prepare the environmental assessment. So this slide here that you see on your screen is the Ontario environmental assessment process, where the first step is to prepare the terms of reference, which would then get submitted for a public review period. Webaquay would collect the comments and incorporate them to the terms of reference, and then submit the proposed terms of reference, which is currently out for review. And then we will collect that feedback and respond to the comments and feedback. And then the minister will make a decision on the terms of reference, and then the environmental assessment process can begin. So what exactly is the environmental assessment terms of reference? Well, it is the work plan for the environmental assessment. It describes what is going to be done in order to understand any impacts of the project on the environment. So that includes natural, social, cultural, economic. So your comments are important because they help determine what will be done during the environmental assessment. So again, please do engage with us, ask us your questions, give us your comments. Again, the number to text is 807-630-1864. Email us at kathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. So how are the environmental assessment terms of reference prepared? Well, first, we look at the supply road. We look at the project. And then we identify project activities associated with the supply road. We then identify the potential effects of those project activities of the supply road. And then we identify ways to prevent those impacts. And then from all of that information, we identify the studies required to assess those impacts. We also prepare a consultation plan that outlines methods of engagement to engage with neighboring Indigenous communities, to engage with government agencies, to engage with stakeholders, and to engage with the public. So all of that information is found in the terms of reference. So input from you on the terms of reference is very important. We need to hear from you, because do we know everything about the environmental effects at this point? No. Do we know everything about the land where the project may be built? No. You as community members and neighbors know the land and have a deep connection with the land. So we want to hear from you. We want to ensure that we're capturing your comments and feedback in the terms of reference. So what is the Webaquay Supply Road? What does this project include? It is not just a road. It is an all-season road that's 107 kilometers from Webequay First Nation Airport to the McFalls Lake area. It's a 2-lane gravel surface. The road corridor within the Webequay First Nation lands is 17 kilometers. So 17 kilometers of the road is on Webequay's reserve land. The preliminary corridor width is 2 kilometers with a final corridor width of 35 meters for the 2-lane gravel surface. There will be a number of water crossing structures such as bridges and culverts. There will be aggregate extraction and processing areas, which includes pits and quarries, as well as access roads. There will be some construction camps, which will be temporary, such as accommodation and catering facilities for construction crews. And there will also be storage and laydown yards used for storage of equipment and materials. There will be 2 main project phases of the project. So the first one being construction, and this could include activities such as field surveys, staking and layout, clearing and grubbing of trees and other vegetation, construction of storage, laydown yards, access roads, construction camps, and aggregate extraction areas, construction of the road and water crossings, handling and storage of fuel for equipment and vehicles, storage, handling, and disposal of hazardous and non-hazardous waste or domestic wastewater and other sewage, and erosion from exposed soils. For operations and maintenance, these activities can include visual inspections of the road and structures, road surface repairs, dust control, control of vegetation and brush within the road corridor, winter maintenance such as snow clearing, cleaning out and repairs to culverts, ditches and outfalls, and other road use controls like road security and enforcement or access to and use of nearby lands. So in order to assess the environment and its impacts as a result of the supply road, we have to do what we call baseline studies. And this is to establish existing conditions. We have to identify and characterize the condition of the environment right now. Like, how is the environment right now? So this gives us something to compare to when we're looking at impacts of the project. So when we do environmental monitoring, if we don't know what the current conditions are, then we don't really know if the project is having an effect on the environment. We also don't know if some of the methods we're using to control environmental impacts are working if we don't have something to compare to. So that's why it's very important for us to characterize the environment right now so we have something to compare to for when the road is constructed and in operations. So what are those baseline studies? So we've already done a number of these baseline studies, so I'll just walk you through a number of them. So for natural environment studies, our specialists have gone out to do winter aerial woodland caribou surveys, waterfowl surveys, summer woodland caribou calving surveys, bat surveys, breeding bird surveys, marsh bird surveys, reptiles and amphibians surveys, aquatic habitat survey, and vegetation survey. For physical environment studies, we've done ground penetrating radar survey to look at the thickness of the peats, a LIDAR survey to look at the height of the land, geotechnical drilling, and surface water sampling. For socioeconomic studies, we will be consulting and engaging with Webequate community members and neighboring Indigenous communities. We'll also be looking at previous studies done within the area, as well as collecting information from government and First Nation organizations, so looking at Statistics Canada census for community profiles and looking at First Nations websites and other publicly available information. For cultural environment studies, this includes collecting traditional knowledge, archaeological assessments, a stage 1 assessments, as well as review of previous studies.
So one of the components of an environmental assessment is to identify potential environmental effects. And just to illustrate this, I thought I'd give you an example. And let's take the example of clearing and grubbing of trees and other vegetation. The potential effects of that activity or component would be loss of vegetation from clearing and the associated loss of wildlife habitat. Ways to mitigate, you'll hear that word a lot, or control that effect could be chipping of wood or leaving small branches, scattering small branches, or just avoiding vegetation clearing during the migratory nesting period and or sensitive life cycle periods for species at risk such as caribou or bats. Now, one of the components of an environmental assessment, key components, is criterion indicators for evaluation. And just to give you an example of that, let's look at fish and aquatic habitat. Let's take indicator species such as brook trout, lake trout, walleye, or lake sturgeon. The indicator or measurement method might be a number of things. It could be a number or area of water bodies crossed. It could be effects on fish spawning, nursery, or rearing areas. It could be habitat quantity or habitat quality. It could be abundance or number of fish. So what are ways to limit, or examples of ways to limit potential environmental effects during design? Let's take construction timing and staging. To minimize environmental effects in this case, the disturbance could be reduced by the disturbance could take the form of vegetation damage or soil loss or soil erosion. This could be reduced to land and water courses by conducting certain activities at different times of year when those lands and water courses are less sensitive to disturbance, such as maybe not in spring when rainfall levels are higher and water levels are higher. So doing that could lessen the likelihood of, for example, soil loss into the water course and causing impacts to aquatic habitat. Now, part of any EA involves looking at alternatives. There's two different approaches. There's alternatives 2, which are different ways of addressing a problem or opportunity. So in this case, you could look at doing nothing. You could upgrade an existing trail or winter road system. You could identify alternative modes of transportation, such as hover barge, airship, or rail. You could manage travel demand, or, as we're proposing in this case, identify a new all-season road. Now, there's also the alternative methods or means. These are different ways of implementing the preferred solution once that's identified. So in our case, we've identified 2 alternative concepts, and you'll see these on the next slide. You see them there on the screen. Now, these 2 concepts were evaluated by Webaquay community members as part of an internal discussion, and there are many factors involved in this evaluation. Some of the key factors included caribou habitat, culturally significant features, either natural or built, areas used intensively for traditional activities, fish spawning areas, seasonal hunting areas, moose mating areas, and community sources of spring water or groundwater. So from all that internal community discussion, a preferred corridor was identified. And you see that on the map now. Then our technical team took this route and then evaluated it technically by looking at things like the height of the land, the number of water bodies crossed, the terrain type, and trying to identify the best route from a technical perspective. Now, as part of every environmental assessment, there are what you call commitments and monitoring. If the EA is approved, there are commitments that Webaquay First Nation would have to meet before, during, and after construction of the road. These commitments are developed based on input from a number of sources: consultation with Indigenous communities, the general public, stakeholders, government agencies, and the Webaquay technical team during the EA process, which is why we're here today. We need to hear from you and provide comments to us on the EA terms of reference. So these commitments, what about these commitments? These commitments may relate to a number of things: project construction, operations and maintenance, mitigation measures or ways to control or limit impacts or effects, ongoing consultation and engagement, the need for other technical investigations during subsequent design phases of the project, and finally, post-construction environmental monitoring, so ongoing environmental monitoring. The approved EA will include both the commitments and how the commitments will be fulfilled. So, this leads me to summarize everything we just talked about. So the Webequay Supply Road is a road to the McFalds Lake mineral exploration and mine development area, the Ring of Fire, for Webaquay First Nation economic development purposes, not the mine development project itself. The environmental assessment identifies and evaluates potential environmental impacts and effects of the project. To do this, a number of technical studies, including gathering traditional knowledge from First Nations communities, will be conducted and are being conducted. The EA Terms of Reference document is, as Marian mentioned, the work plan for the environmental assessment. While we already know many of the environmental impacts of a project like this from previous projects and know how to control or limit these impacts, we don't know the area as well as you do as community members. You know the land, have a special connection with the land. We need to hear from you on the EA Terms of Reference. An approved EA, again, will include both the commitments and how those commitments will be fulfilled, such as environmental monitoring and additional consultation and engagement. So that wraps up our EA Terms of Reference presentation. We are now going to go to a video that's going to talk in a little bit more detail about the 3-tier approach that I talked to you about earlier. So I think we have that queued up. It looks like it. After the video, maybe Marian, if you want to tell everyone about the questions and how people can ask questions.
Yes, please text us your questions at 807-630-1864 or email us at kathy.banning@supplyroad.ca. That is cathy.banning@supplyroad.ca, or just drop us a comment down below if you're viewing this on Facebook or YouTube. We love getting this live engagement from you, hearing your questions live and being able to answer them for you live as if we would be visiting you in the communities. So this is why we're here today, because we want to hear from you and answer your questions live. So please do that. Think about your questions as you watch this video. Hopefully it'll spark some questions in your mind, and then text them to us, email them, or drop them in the comment section down below. So get your thinking caps on, ask us those questions.
That's Josie Jacob. He's going to talk about the tree, I think the 3-tier model of the land for Webequay First Nation. And he got this from way back from other elders. Josie, and that's the one of those. Josie's 90 years old already, so way back before he got this information from the other elders. How they can protect their land, and also their livelihood, the resources of this area.
The three-tier system is a set of ideas or rules based on traditional use of the land. The tiers are determined by how far a man could walk in 2 days roughly, and determine how different areas are developed while protecting the community's integral cultural resources. These are native ideas being put into work.
It says the yellow mark, the color yellow, is for the economic development, the resources, and whatever the people, the non-native people are looking for minerals, just let them do it. Just let them look for the minerals. As long as that finding, the discovery of the mineral, as long as that business runs, you're going to get the benefit from that business, as long as it runs. If they discover or they find the mineral around that green mark, they have to come here to the community. They have to come and discuss the findings of that mineral. That green circle there, you can't give that away. You have to keep that for the community. So that's all the benefits are going to come from. He knows already that like the trapping doesn't work anymore. It's not worth it anymore. Same as fishing and all that, but it's only for private use. And that green part is very important. The resources are there. If you know how to manage that green part, then back to the reserve is going to survive. You or them as an Indian cannot give that away. This example, this plan here, you cannot give that away. You have to use it the way it's pronounced, how described. How is it described? That's how you use it to benefit from the land.
Great, we hope you enjoyed that short video today. So we did have a few questions that rolled in, and again, if you guys are still thinking about your questions, please do text us your questions, email us your questions, or drop them in the comment section below in Facebook or YouTube. I mean, I understand some of you may not be tuning in this afternoon. It is a gorgeous day out here in Thunder Bay. It's beautiful, it's sunny outside, so hopefully you're taking advantage of that weather. But we do appreciate those of you that are tuning in today, right now in our session. So thank you for your participation. This really means a lot. We do enjoy receiving your live feedback and questions, so that way we can answer them here for you live. So we'll just start off with the questions that we do have here, Dawn, from someone. So the question is, what are the impacts on water?
Wow, that's a big question.
It is.
Yeah, we're going to be doing and are doing a lot of water-related studies as part of this environmental assessment, both groundwater and surface water, looking at quantity and quality. So there's a lot of effort that's going to be and is being focused on water. So we have, numerous, all the water crossing locations will be sampled for water quality. We've got numerous locations where we've drilled wells for water quality and quantity, looking at the changes in groundwater levels as well too. So there's a lot of attention being paid to water on this project, as there should be.
For sure.
Well, I think I've got a question for you, Marian. It looks like, okay, will human health be assessed?
Oh, interesting.
That's a good one.
Yes, human health will be assessed, and it's actually a requirement that was set out in the Tailored Impact Statement Guidelines that the federal agency has set out for us. So yes, we will be looking at human health, and we'll be focusing on human health of Webequay First Nations. So looking at things like contaminants in the water. So we'll be taking water samples, or if there's any contaminants in the wildlife that they are harvesting, or the fish that they're harvesting, or even plants that they're gathering. So we'll be doing things like
or in the
that.
soil as
or
well
in the
too.
soil,
Right?
that's
Yeah.
right. And actually, our next streaming session for next week is going to be focused on human health. So if that is something that you are interested in, and even if you're not interested in, I mean, it will be an interesting topic to talk about next week, so that way you as the viewer have an understanding as to how human health will be looked at as part of the EA. So I encourage you to tune in next week to our session, so that way you have an idea as to how that will be assessed. So it looks like there is another question here for you, Dawn, very similar to the water one, but how will wildlife be protected?
Wow, these are great questions, big questions. And again, wildlife is something else that we are and are going to be studying in a lot of detail. We're looking at species at risk, including bats and caribou. We're looking at breeding birds. We're looking at migratory waterfowl. We're looking at it looks like we'll be looking at wolverine and there's a lot of wild fish and wildlife studies that are done that are being done, have been done, and will be done as part of this work. So wildlife will be protected because we're going to be establishing a very robust baseline for the current wildlife conditions.
That's right.
I think we're going to go now to a couple of videos.
Oh.
I think these are videos out on the land, if I'm correct. I think they've got drones in them, and as we always say, everybody loves drone videos. There's some really dramatic
That's right.
footage, and I think there's going to be more dramatic footage in these two videos, and I think it looks like we're ready to go to the videos. So I hope you enjoy them. They're quick. They're each about a minute long, and then we'll come back and take your last few questions.
One of the purposes of the EA, or the environmental assessment, is to look at natural spots like this, filled with beauty and used by the community, and to come up with concrete solutions as to how we can protect it. community weighs in, scientists weigh in, and other communities can give their comments. And from all this information, a plan is made that will guide the construction of any roads, bridges, etc. to cause the least damage.
Hope you enjoyed that drone footage. We always love seeing that kind of work done by our specialists. They do hard work to prepare that footage for everyone so they can see the land of which, the Webaquay Supply Road will be on. And the landscape is it's beautiful. So just want to give a shout out to our specialists for doing that for us. So a question came in, Don.
Okay.
Maybe you can tackle this one.
Yeah, I'll do my
us.
best. Prepare myself.
So the baseline studies, we have a question about when those baseline studies will be completed.
Completed. Okay. They started over a year ago, and so we've done many baseline studies, and they are going to continue into next year as well too. We've got a number of them. Many of the studies are multi-year studies, so we'll be continuing next year as well too. So they should wrap up, I think, towards the end of next year. I got a question for you, Marian.
Okay.
This is a good one, and one that's asked a lot. And I don't know if you can answer it, but give it a shot anyway. Is Webequay, or will Webequay be the owner of the road?
Oh, yes, we do get that question a lot. So we do not know yet who the owner of the road will be. Currently, Webequay First Nation is the proponent of the environmental assessment and just the environmental assessment. So we just don't know who the owner of the road will be right now. So hope that answers that question. So with that, I think that is all that we have here today from everybody that has tuned in. And we just want to thank you for joining us today for this session. And as I said earlier, these sessions are going to be weekly, every Wednesday at 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. So do put it in your calendars. We'll actually be doing these until the end of the month. So we just have 2 more sessions left. Next week, we'll be focusing on human health. So tune in for that. That will be an interesting topic because human health is going to be a new thing as part of the impact assessment. So do tune in to that next week. Now, we want you to, and we encourage you to like us on Facebook. Our handle is WFN Supply Road. So there you will get updates on our live streaming sessions. You'll see when they are, so that way you can get those notifications as to when those live streams will be done. Visit our website, supplyroad.ca. We have a wealth of information on there. We have short videos with Webequay community members. We have short videos with subject matter experts on there. We have a variety of communication materials on there, such as fact sheets and newsletters. So there is a lot of information there that you can just take a look at on the website on there. Do keep in mind that these materials are translated or will be translated as well into native languages, but just bear with us because it takes time for translators to get through all that material. So just keep checking for all of that on our website. Also, do subscribe to our newsletter because you will receive updates as the project progresses, updates on our next live streaming sessions as well. So do subscribe so that way you are kept up to date. So these live streaming sessions, this is just the beginning of the engagement process. It does not end here today or even after our live streams are done at the end of the month. We want to continue engaging with you, answering your questions, seeking your feedback and your comments, so that way we are incorporating that into our terms of reference and ultimately into the environmental assessment. So we hope that you join us next week for our human health topic. And until next time, please do stay safe, and we'll chat with you then. Thank you.